Good afternoon. Hello, how are we all doing? Welcome to our Finding Your Voice outreach event. Can I just would you mind just letting me know that you can hear me? If somebody could just kind of give me a little nod in the Q&A box, that would be really appreciated, just to make sure I'm not talking to myself. So I've got a bit of a delay on this, so I don't know if anyone's responded in the Q&A. Oh, lovely, thank you. Somebody has. Thank you so much. That's good news. Okay, so welcome. Today we are going to be talking about how you have power to change the world, what changes should be made, and how you can start doing that. What we're going to do is we're going to start writing a speech, and we'll have some time to rehearse it and think about our public speaking skills. And then hopefully we'll be able to gather these together after today's event and turn them into a podcast. So that is my hope. And if I manage that, then hopefully we'll be able to share it with all of you as well. So welcome to today. I'm very glad you could join us. So let's get started. If you haven't done so already, if you could please make sure that you have something to write on and something to write with. That would be really helpful. We're thinking about what the world is going to be like in 2040, which seems like a really long way away right now. But that is when you will be around 30 years old, if you can believe it or not. So we're thinking about what the world will be like then and how we might want to change it to be how we want it to be. So finding your voice. Why is this important? As you come into secondary school, you're going to be taught by people who also teach adults, because some of our older students are 18. So you might have a lesson straight after the teacher that you're about to have has taught 18-year-olds. This means that we do tend to treat you in quite an adult way. And whilst we do change the way that we talk to you versus how we talk to our 18-year-olds, you will find that we will speak to you in a bit more of an adult way. So part of our role, if you like, as secondary teachers is helping you to develop opinions on real world issues so that you can talk about them in that adult-like way with us. The kinds of things that we're talking about are climate change, the economy, politics, education. These are all the kinds of things that we would have, we do regularly have discussions with our students from year 7 all the way up to year 13 about students' opinions on these very important world issues. Our hope is that when you leave us at the end of year 11 or the end of year 13, that you are then an adult who has these opinions ready to share them with the world. And this is part of what makes you, you. And what we want to do is to help you to grow to become those adults. There are opportunities in secondary schools for doing this, such as the school council, which you probably have experience of in primary, but we have one here as well at secondary school. We have mock trials, we have mock G7 summits, we have public speaking, we have debating, and these are not just extracurricular activities, but it's also a bit about how we teach our subjects. So it's something we very much look forward to doing with you next year. So finding your voice. How can you change the world? Don't worry, I'm not going to talk at you the entire time. You will have lots to do not worry. So how can you change the world? Some people feel as though they are born to take on the world. Some people feel as though they want to change something, but they don't necessarily feel that they are ready to be the ones to do it. Some people feel that they don't know how the world should change, but they have lots of opinions that they want to share, and they're still figuring out what the end result needs to look like. You never know what impact you might have on the world, but if you want to make a difference, it can feel a bit daunting. How do you become someone who people listen to, whose advice they take, who they look up to? Let's imagine it's the year 2040. Thursday, the 10th of June, 2040. You are all now 30 years old. You are adults who have finished school. Maybe you've gone to university. You probably have a job, maybe with a yearly salary. Maybe you own your own company. Maybe you're self-employed. Maybe you own your own home. Maybe you have a family. Maybe you don't. We really don't know what your life is going to be like at this point. You're probably, whatever it's turned out like, a very busy person. So how might the world have changed in that time? What has happened to global warming in the next 30 years? What's happened to COVID? What's happened to education? How are the flying cars working out for you? I hope you're enjoying them. Have you been on holiday to the moon yet? I want you to take a minute now and write down how you want the world to be. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to make some notes. You could make a list, you could write a mind map. If you really want to, you could just write a paragraph. I would love it if you would share some of your ideas in the chat box, but just spend 3 minutes now picturing the world how you want it to be. Okay, so 3 minutes, enjoy. I will start the time. I'm hoping I get to see some of your answers in the chat box. Please feel free to add them in there. It would be really lovely to see what you're coming up with. You've got about a minute left. Okay, so we've got some really lovely ideas here that I can see from the Q&A box. So we've got a lot of people thinking about changing climate change and trying to reverse that. A very noble cause, obviously, and one that we would all benefit from. So thank you very much for your input. Okay, so we're thinking about how you can change the world. There are different ways to change it, but most of the ways to change the world involve sharing your opinion, either by writing or by talking, or most likely through a bit of both. And this is obviously where our literacy comes in. Everyone has the responsibility to change the world, started off like you. For example, if I click here, we've obviously got Greta Thunberg here. We've got Emma Gonzalez. We have got Malala as well. These people who have had quite an impact already on the world, still quite young, they all started off at one point your age. And some of them, I'm sure, felt quite ready to try and take on the world and make a difference. And some of them probably felt a bit daunted by it. Thank you. It's nice to know you appreciate my technology. We want to kind of help you become the person you want to be as well. Whoever's just posted, is this the chat? Yes, it is. That's the Q&A box right there. So you can feel free to leave me any comments that you like just there, and I'll respond to them by talking. So let's think now about what you will change and why should people do what you say. Now take it as someone who does this for a living, trying to get people to do what you say. There is certainly a knack to it. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you want to change the world, let's start now. Those who joined early might have had a chance to do this before we started, but I want you to choose something that you want to change by the year 2040. I'm going to share a few ideas and then I'm going to give you a minute to choose what it is that you want to talk about today for this piece of work. It could be something to do with schools. At the moment, some people are suggesting that our school days need to finish later so that we can catch up on some of the learning time missed during lockdown. What do you think of that? It could be something to do with the environment. As I said already, at the moment, the G7 summit is taking place in Cornwall. This is where 7 of the world leaders are getting together to discuss the global approach to climate change. What can we do which would make a difference? How do we want things to be in 2040? It could be something to do with the COVID vaccines. We don't know how long we're going to have COVID. It could still be, there could be variants, we don't know, quite simply. At the moment, though, there's a lot of talk about vaccines. And we're very lucky that we've had such a good rollout in this country of the vaccines, but not every country has been as lucky as we are to have had access to them. It doesn't have to be something serious. It could be something to do with the flavours of crisps, or which sport you think is best. Maybe by the year 2040, these will look a bit different. It could be about your favourite book, TV show or film. But I want you to think about something that you think should be changed by the year 2040. And I want you to write it down on your piece of paper as a heading. So I'm going to give you 1 minute now to do that. Just choose something that you'd like to change by 2040. That's what you're going to talk about today. Good luck. 1 minute time. Okay, so hopefully you have got you've got an idea of what it is that you're going to work on today. So it isn't enough for us just to say what should be different. Not many people in this world like change. I'm one of them. I really don't like it when things change. So we have to give people really good reasons for why change needs to happen and why your proposed solution is the best one out there, because everyone has these different opinions. So we need to make sure your voice is heard. When we're thinking about reasons for something, there are three main types of persuasive reason. There's one called ethos. I'm going to put this in the chat box so you can see how I'm spelling this. So we have ethos, we have got, logos, and we have pathos. So when we're talking about these three things, our ethos is about what is right and what is wrong, so what is ethical. Logos is doing something because it's just logical to do it. And pathos, finally, is doing something because you feel sympathetic. Now, most of our very famous persuasive people in the world who have made a difference tend to use all three of these when they are talking. So, hopefully, you have chosen your thing that you want to change by the year 2040. Underneath that, what I'd like you to do is to write down as many reasons for why that thing should be changed and why your idea is the best one. Think about how that is that it needs to be changed. How can we do that? How can we make that work in the world? If you want an extra challenge, which I know some of you in here probably do, see if you can work out if your reasons are ethos, logos, or pathos. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll respond to you. But you have got 4 minutes now to list your reasons. Off you go. That's about halfway through your time. If you have any questions, don't forget, pop them in the chat box and I'll get back to you. 2 more minutes. You might find it useful if you've got somebody there with you to talk this through with them, because you'll probably find your reasons will come to you verbally. Sometimes that's just how people's brains work. So if you've got someone there to listen to you, might be a good idea. Right, that is your 4 minutes. Hopefully you've got a lovely list of questions. We'll be coming back to use those in just a little bit. So when we've got a nice long list of things, or even just a short list, we need to sit down sometimes and organise them. When giving a speech, it is really important to start by giving people a reason to listen, a reason to pay attention. So with that in mind, you should have a #1 reason, or you should have a top reason why your change should happen, why we should do what you are suggesting. What I'd like you to do is just to go through, have a look at your list that you've made, or your mind map, or whatever it is you've written, and I would like you to choose your best reason from that activity and write a 1 next to it. Choose carefully, because this has to be the reason that people are going to listen to you. So 1 minute, choose your best one and put a #1 next to it. Off you go. Okay, now that you know the reason that you would start with, let's think about how you would talk about it. Here are some ideas that we can use for how to connect with our audience. And here's the thing, this is a bit of a trick, guys. You're going to notice these now when people are using them on you. These are teacher tricks as well as public speaking tricks. So #1, naming your listeners. So if you're ever sitting in class and your teacher wants you to pay attention, they'll probably use your name to get you to listen. This is something that public speakers do as well. Sharing your personal experiences. This is letting the audience know something about you. Why is this topic important to you? This next one might sound a bit odd, but thank yous. If you thank people in a speech, well, it's just polite, but also people feel a bit more generous with their listening. Telling a joke. A bit dangerous sometimes, not everyone has the same kind of sense of humour, and trust me, as someone who occasionally tells an unfunny joke, they don't always go down very well. But if you can tell a funny joke, they are a very good thing to include in some speeches. Obviously, you've got to think about the tone. Shared references, sharing things brings people together. These are all things you can do in a speech that will help. But if you have a shared reference, something that both you and your audience would understand, then that is going to help them listen to you. And finally, repetition, repeating your main messages. People tend to forget things that they hear, which is why you need to repeat your main messages so that people actually remember them. After all, what is the point in giving a speech if people don't remember what it is that you have said? Now, we're going to write the opening to our speeches. We have several options here to how to begin it. We could start, we need to make sure people are paying attention. We could start with a dramatic verbal image. So using a really good bit of imagery, you could paint either a vision of what we are aiming for or a vision of what could happen if we don't make the change. We could start with a rhetorical question to get people really thinking deeply about the topic we're going to talk about. You could start with a logic puzzle to make it clear that what you're proposing is logical. This tends to break down a complex situation into a much more simple one. There are, of course, many other ways to start a speech, but these are the 3 main ones. I would like you to rethink about how you're going to start your speeches. I would suggest choosing one of these ways, either starting with a dramatic image, starting with a rhetorical question, or starting with some kind of logic puzzle. and have a go at writing out just 3 sentences, no more than that, but best quality sentences to write your opening. Now, I've said I'm going to give you 5 minutes there. I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking I'm going to have to give you slightly less, so I'm going to cut that down to just 4 minutes. I do apologise. If you wish to write it into the chat box and share it with me, I'd love to see it. If you'd rather keep it personal and just write it on your paper, that's also fine. I don't mind. But let's have a go at really doing some impressive openings here, guys. 4 minutes, off you go. Just to remind you, if you need me, I'm here in the chat box. I'm happy to respond if you want to put things on here, and I can give you some feedback. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Okay, lovely. So I hope you have got a really fantastic opening there to your speech. Remember, it has to give people a reason to listen. We have to engage them straight away, otherwise they tend to switch off. So once you've written your opening, we need to start thinking about our middle. So let's move the slide on. So think at the middle. However we've started it in the opening, we now need to outline exactly what the problem is that we are trying to fix and what the changes that we are proposing. How are we actually going to go about fixing it? What I'd like you to do is to think about the way that you could explain this. So you to outline your problem very, very clearly. I've got here kind of a guide, 5 sentences worth, and I want you to think very carefully about what you include, but also the way that you actually write it. So your first sentence that you're about to write for me, either in the chat box or in your paper, is absolutely fine. Explain what the problem is, and as you do so, I want you to use a simile. In your second sentence, why is this problem important? Why should the person listening to you care about the thing that you are talking about? And there I want you to use some exaggeration. Your third sentence, say how this isn't good enough. And you can say that, you can use those words, I don't mind. But it'd be lovely to see you trying to use some alliteration. Your fourth sentence, you're going to explain the consequences of this problem. What is going to happen if we don't fix this problem that you have identified that you want to fix by the year 2040? And to do that, I want to use some really dramatic imagery. And finally, your fifth sentence, you're going to start it with the phrase, the answer is simple, followed by a colon, and then you're going to explain your simple solution to the problem. So I'm going to give you now some time to write that paragraph. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to write that paragraph. And again, if you want to type it in the chat, please do so. I hope you're getting a really developed piece of writing from this. And I hope we get to see it at some point in the future, but I do hope this is nice and developed. So 4 minutes, I'm on the chat if you need me. So please feel free to ask any questions and I'll speak to you again in 4 minutes. Off you go. Okay, so I hope you've got a really lovely paragraph there. Now, sadly, today we don't have time to write your whole speech, and I really wish we did. It would be wonderful. I do invite you to finish writing it after this session. And so to help you do that, I'm going to explain to you how you would write up the rest of it. Essentially, you chose your best reason at the start of this session. I would choose 2 more reasons. I would aim for 3 per speech, because 3 seems to be a nice number. It's a number that people feel very comfortable with. I would start off by choosing, personally, putting my most straightforward reason, thinking about my most logical reason as to why people should do what I'm saying they should do. So I'm just clicking through. So I'll start with my most logical one. And then I would put the other 2 into whatever order makes sense. But usually I would go from my logical to my ethical one. And then from there, probably my one that tugs on the heartstrings a bit. It's about getting people to feel sympathetic. I would try to make sure that my last part of my speech focuses on my most powerful reason, because that should be the climax of your speech, where you are the most passionate about what you're saying, and it should be the exciting part of the speech that's been leading up to that. So you need to think very carefully about your word choices for the end of your speech to show that. The conclusion is where you are wrapping up everything. You're not saying anything new necessarily in your conclusion. You want to bring it back to your introduction. Your conclusion needs to leave people thinking about what you've said, so that it kind of echoes in their brains after you've finished speaking. We want to have those key phrases that you've used bouncing around people's heads. So we need to make sure that it is simple, because if it's too complicated, it won't echo. We need to make sure that it is strong, so that people actually believe you and they trust you. And we need to make sure that it is important. Phrases that are useful here would be things like, which brings me back to what I have said first, or therefore, how could anyone disagree with? And I would go back to your introduction, go back to what you said in that lovely opening, and really think about how you can tie this together. So it goes around like a circle. You end up where you began. Your final sentence should be the most powerful one of your entire speech. It is the main message, and it is the thing that you want people to remember, even if they forget everything else that you have said. So therefore, you need to word it very, very carefully. It would be good practice to actually think about the way that you would end it, usually before you've written most of your speech. I would have spent 2 minutes now giving you time to write your final sentence, but I can just see the clock in the bottom right hand corner of my screen here, and I know I'm running short of time. So I do apologise. This recording, I think, becomes available after this session. So you'll have all the information that you can use if you wish to write it up, and I would love to see these. So writing your final sentence is a good idea to do whilst you're still, before you get tired by the end of writing a speech. I do want to spend some time now just thinking about how we can present it well, because you can take a really well-written speech, but if someone doesn't say it convincingly, it still won't persuade people. There are 2 things to think about here. Vocality is one of them, how you use your voice, and physicality, how you use your body. So let's start with the voice. You have the ability to make music with your voice, not by singing, but by the way you speak, so that it almost comes across like music. So we should think about it in the same kind of way. When we are thinking about music, we think about pitch, we think about pauses and pace. These are the same kinds of things that we think about with public speaking: volume, pitch, pace, pauses, and stress. Therefore, what this means is that you would want to mark out in your speech where you are going to say things louder, or where you're going to say things quieter. You want to note in your speech where your voice is going to go quite high and where it's going to go quite low. because that actually has quite a big impact on the way people listen to you. You want to mark out on your speech where you're going to maybe speed up a little bit, and maybe where do you want to slow it down. By varying between quicker and slower, it makes it nicer to listen to. You also want to think about using pauses. A dramatic pause is a very powerful thing. Don't overuse it because it will become a little bit strange otherwise. And finally, thinking about stress and emphasizing certain words. So are there particular words in your speech that you really want to kind of hit hard so people listen? I would advise you to go back through what you've written and to mark out like a script where you would do these things. And it's something I do with my public speakers. They all do this with their speeches before they get near a competition. Let's think about body language, because body language is an underestimated tool. It can be very tempting to hide behind a piece of paper and stare at the words, even if you know your speech off by heart. But how boring would that be to listen to? So, things to consider. Eye contact. During a speech, and I'm talking as a teacher here, during a lesson, I try to make eye contact with as many people as I possibly can. Facial expression. Think about the way that your face actually looks. I'm one of those people that you can tell instantly how I'm feeling just by my face. It's very expressive. I don't get to hide my emotions at all. But if you can use that in a really effective way, then you're reinforcing what you're saying. And then finally, hands. Will you use your hands to emphasize something? Do you speak with your hands? Lots of people do. They throw their arms around. Even now, sitting at my computer, knowing you can't see me, I'm still using my hands. Not many people will actually keep their hands completely still. That can look quite unnatural sometimes. If this is such a powerful thing, plan where you're going to do this. So really, again, you can note it on your script where you are going to use your hands. Ideally, I would now give you time to rehearse your opening and anything else that you might have written. When you are rehearsing a bit of public speaking, there are lots of different things you can do. Sitting by yourself and talking out loud can come across as a little odd, but it is the best way. So you can talk to a mirror. Talking to a mirror is quite useful. Talking to a pet. Dogs and cats make really good audiences. And if you can get a family member to sit and listen to you, so much the better. When you are rehearsing a speech, mistakes are more than welcome. That is how we learn. So don't worry about making mistakes. Embrace it. Think about what mistakes you've made and why, and how you can fix them in future. So that is what I would invite you to do after this session today. And like I say, I really, really do wish that we could do that now. And unfortunately, we've just run out of time, which is such a shame. What I would love to have heard as well is something that you're proud of from this session. And if you do get the chance to pop that in the chat box while I'm just talking through this last bit, I would love to hear it. Just anything at all that you are proud of for something you've done in this session. Maybe something you've written, maybe a particular sentence, maybe it's thinking about the way that you might use your hands, but something that you think, yeah, I can do that. That's really exciting. So I'm going to end today by saying something that probably you don't get told a lot. Don't stop talking. Okay. That might sound a bit odd coming from a teacher, but still, I would absolutely love to hear from you, either if you've written out a speech or if you want to record it and email in a recording. I would absolutely love to hear them. So please do share what you have done. You can see there on the screen I've put an email address. It's our keepintouch@wangels.wokingham.sch.uk. That is how we hear from our students, what they've been up to during lockdown and holidays and things now. And it'd be nice to hear from you through that one. I'm hoping that if we do get some people who send in what they've done, that we can maybe put them together into this podcast, and then I can share that with you. either before you come in September or perhaps when you're here. That'd be brilliant. So please do use that email address. So I really hope today that you've learned that you do have the power to change the world. We take an idea and we get through to that final product. Changing the world is something which is done by people every day, in small ways, in big ones. And if that's the case, then why can't it be you that's changing it? Because one day you will be running the world. People your age will be. People born in your year will be in power. So why on earth what is going to stop you from being that person if that's what you want? I hope you've started to think about the world that you want to live in when you're 2040, when you're 30, too many numbers there, and what needs to be changed to make that world possible. Because these things, I'm afraid, don't happen by accident. You need to make the world the one that you want to live in. And finally, I hope you're feeling a little bit more ready to come up to secondary school in September. We are really excited to see you then. Strange, obviously, that we haven't actually seen you before then, but this is the world we live in currently. We can't wait to hear your views when you come and join us in September. And again, please do not stop talking. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate that you've stuck with me for the extra 5-6 minutes there. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you in September. Thank you very much.